Today we talk to Alessio Artuffo, who is the Chief Revenue Officer at Docebo. Docebo is the learning management system that CertaPro uses, and we've been using it for many years. Alessio has been with Docebo for almost 9 years now, and we talk about their growth story from being a small business to now being publicly traded, including developing a culture of learning and the importance of staying in your lane. And can you kick us off and tell us a little bit about just Docebo, introduce us to Docebo and a little bit about your story with Docebo.
Happy to. Docebo is a learning platform. We are essentially a product SaaS platform that allows for learning delivery, learning management, and learning tracking. Docebo is a company that is based out of Toronto, Canada, institutional headquarters. However, it was started, funded, and the springboard to growth began, believe it or not, in Milan, Italy. We continued and really established ourselves as a global player once we have successfully grown in North America. Our first step in the United States prior to Canada was in the actual beautiful town of Athens, Georgia, where presently we have our biggest North American hub in terms of personnel. More than 100 people of the Docebians live and work out of Athens, Georgia.
Wow.
Additionally, we have grown over time our presence in London, UK, continue to invest in R&D in our Italian offices.
And you referenced them as Docebians. This is
That's right.
Real term.
That's right. Well, look, in over the course of time, the best companies build, invest, and evolve their own culture. And I want to believe that we have worked very hard on continuing to evolve ours. And so being a Docebian means a lot to us, and it means that you have embraced the key values, the core values of the company.
Can you expand on that a touch? When you and I first had our relationship, 6 or 7 years ago.
Yeah.
And
right.
I found you online, and somehow I found your cell phone number and cold called you because I wanted to talk to the top dog.
That's right.
And the company was smaller at that point. And can you talk to us about how with culture, when from 6, 7 years ago, when you're smaller, maybe you could speak to that size, how do you evolve a culture and hold that culture together from 6, 7 years ago till now?
Yeah. Oh man, it's a journey. And I remember that day that you called, Rich. I still do, believe it or not. I remember the conversation we had. And I remember that you ended up deciding to become a customer, by the way, with your business. You always told me that one of the reasons why you did was not because you spoke to me over the phone, but because there was because we cared, right? And because that touch of humans that we provided from the very first moment the phone rang was appreciated. And maybe at that time, bigger companies wouldn't certainly pick up the phone right to a random call. I did. We had a great conversation, and that then allowed us to become partners for a long time. But you're right. At that point, I remember when you called, probably I just finished setting up myself an IKEA desk in the office with my own hands. We were that small. I think we were maybe 3 to 4 people, no more, in the United States. And if your question is, how do you continue to grow culture while growing the business over time? I think it revolves around a couple things. One, having a vision for what you want to accomplish, and a vision that is not just for the immediate results, but for the long-term results. So we've always had in our minds a 5-year plan ahead of us what we wanted to become and what we had to do to accomplish that. The second thing I'll say is, I think we were fortunate and perhaps good in the beginning times of the setups of Docebo across the different offices to find the people that corresponded to our core values, to hire those that had certain skills that perhaps were not so much big dogs in the industry or that had a tremendous amount of experience, but that had those underlying qualities, behaviors, intentions that we were looking for. And so, yeah, I think we were really intentional as far as who we brought on board in the beginning. Those ended up becoming, most of them, leaders later on. They continue to foster that culture. I would say hiring the right people, growing them, giving them opportunities also of making mistakes at times. Yeah, because people need to make mistakes to grow as people and professionals. And being very honest to ourselves about where we needed to improve every single time, and not being blinded, I guess, by ego, because ego is growing them, giving them opportunities also of making mistakes at times. Yeah, because people need to make mistakes to grow as people and professionals. And being very honest to ourselves about where we needed to improve every single time, and not being blinded, I guess, by ego, because ego is a dangerous trap that startups particularly often fall into.
You had talked about vision, and you had a vision for in 5 years or so. Can you speak to what was the vision and what is the vision now?
The vision at that time was, we have a DNA of that is very centered around technology and products. And at that time, the vision, the mission statement was, how do we really leverage the best technologies available to create the most impactful learning experiences for our customers? LMS is solving one core problem that most companies have, delivering content just-in-time training to whether it's to employees and workforce, or to our customers, our partners, our associates, our retail groups, right? What generically speaking we talk about, we're saying, is this internal learning or external learning? Are we satisfying internal audiences, the employees that are part of the company, or somebody that we need to retain, attract, upsell, generate more profit with? And those are two different jobs using the same technology. And so the first realization was the market is changing. LMS used to be associated with compliance. And let's get this course going, and let's get the privacy certification, let's get the badge here on the shoulder. Where we've seen around 2016 a shift in the market, very progressive organizations, and I don't want to make names for both rights and elegance, but there were some banks, even like big institutions that were very progressive, that came to us and said, we do all that internal learning thing. That's not what we're talking about right now. The way we're thinking about it is learning, if we can instill a culture of learning across our customers, and our customers are one step ahead, what we are going to be achieving is a competitive advantage against our competition. We're going to have customers that stay with us for longer time. We're going to have customers that want to know more about our continued offering and services. And so that really sparkled an idea that was already in us of transforming learning from the compliance world to the customer world. And I would say, particularly in 2017, 18, and 19, our focus has been tremendous in the world of in signaling and messaging to the market that there's learning that goes beyond internal adoption. That was a pivoting in the vision of how we run the everyday business. The latest innovation within the vision would probably relate to the way we want to approach the market. So, we used to be, again, this LMS that solves one problem, but how many other problems learning professionals face and tackle every day? There are many more that go beyond what LMS does. And so can we be that company, that sole company that affirms itself in the market in the years to come as the place that you can go to solve multiple problems, whether it's creating content, whether it's having pre-made content, whether it's upskilling the workforce, whether it's measuring the impact of learning on the individuals that have taken that learning, whether it's analyzing the outcomes of learning in the company KPIs. And all these things that I'm saying are critical, but they're forgotten and diluted a lot of times in a lot of custom tools, Excel spreadsheets, really self-made solutions. And so our vision is having a response with products to all these problems and becoming more of a learning suite of solutions rather than a single product vendor.
Alessio, one of the things I'm fascinated by, is you're right. I mean, I remember being with a company and we had an LMS tool, but it was for compliance, it was for HR, it was for all that. And the feeling and the culture within the organization was, oh, here we go again. We got to go do this annual course and it's a pain in the butt. And I love the way that Docebo is looking at this now, and looking at how it can impact customers and growth of a business and really enable companies to move it forward. So I love that aspect of it. Have you guys also looked at the education side of things? Because I know education is being thrown a massive curveball right now, and a lot of people are moving to online education. I know one of my own kids is moving to online education right now. Or are you guys staying in the commercial landscape?
Yeah, so it's an interesting one. Certainly something that we've considered and thought about, but where we're strong right now is the commercial enterprise segments. So we help, even recently, this is gonna sound like self-bragging rights, guys, but we've partnered with Amazon AWS that recognized us as their leader and vendor for their global programs of training. And I have this inside joke. I can tell you this: in 2013, when our size was much smaller, and we were talking about the innovation of the company and the dream scenarios, right? And the customers that we would have loved to work with in the past. I think it was around 2013 or 2014, right around that time, that we thought, one day we will be in a position to where we can offer our services to the big brands out there, whether it's Amazon or, the other big ones that represent the top ones in their category. And so it took us 6 years to get there and win the business of one of the most prestigious and probably most successful companies in the world right now. And, we take a lot of pride into that.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
One of the things that you could attribute some of your success to is staying in your lane. I think that's so important for any business, is to stay in your lane. What can you be the best in the world at?
Yeah.
And just crush it. And as soon as you start chasing the next shiny object is when you start putting resources to something that's more of a crapshoot. It's less likely to turn out than putting resources into what your core product is. And you guys are so successful. I just noticed 2 days ago on LinkedIn that you guys were recognized to be #1 learning management system of 2020 by the e-learning industry.
Yeah.
Speak to what would you attribute that success to, and what does that mean to Docebians?
The stay in your lane. I love that you just said, because in reality, probably staying in your lane is one of the most difficult things that startups face as they grow as a company. And why is that? Because naturally speaking, when you start acquiring customers and winning business, and running this business, if you love your customers, as we do, you're gonna hear customers asking you all sorts of things. There's going to be a lot of requests. And the job that's really hard there is making sure that you're hearing everybody, but you have a process and a logic by which you improve the company, but not take directional decisions that change the original goal and vision for the business. And as much as it sounds like a type of the fact, it's surprising how many companies are dragged in directions that are not the ones they ultimately wanted to pursue. And it's easy. I'll give you an example. Big customer comes to the table and says, oh my gosh, I'll give you all this money if you only did A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I. And those were not in your plan. So now you have to balance money or plan. Mm-hmm. And some no's are the best no's you can spend your career, and you have to spend them. That's very critical. So stay in your lane. I subscribe to that.
So Rich, obviously Alessio talked about the story where you guys connected a few years ago as you were looking for an LMS for your company. You are a partner of Docebo today, your company. Obviously, you picked the right horse to ride for your firm. What has been the biggest impact the LMS system has had on your company?
Wow. The way that we've used Docebo has been primarily in onboarding systems. And one of the things that attracted us to Docebo early on, and I'm not sure what other LMS players are doing these days, but one of the things that was unique about Docebo was the way that we could enter in someone's role in our business, because we have probably 7 or 8 different roles, and automatically assign things by role and just automate it all behind the scenes. So we very quickly, there were 3 of us that worked together, myself working on the franchise operations side and performance management, Kelly Duran, who was working on the instructional design side, and then Jeremy Morgan, who ultimately worked at Docebo for a period of time because of Alessio's my relationship and Jamie's great work. Jamie worked on the LMS administration side. And those 3 people, me being one of them, we all, speaking of staying in our lane, Alessio, we all stayed in our own lane. Kelly could not do what Jamie does in terms of administration and the detail orientation. Jamie could not do what I do in terms of the franchising side and performance management. The 3 of us together were really lightning in a bottle with a partner like Docebo, where we developed over 200 fully automated courses that were real e-learning over a 2-year period of time. We developed that many, and it wasn't narrated PowerPoints. It was real e-learning. And Docebo was such a great partner with us during that time and continues to be, and how that gets distributed specifically in our onboarding. We have other compliance side of things that we use it for, but to Alessio's point is our needs have evolved beyond compliance, and it's been more skill development and performance management. The offerings that Docebo has have evolved with us.
That's great. And Alessio, I want to come back to a little bit of your entrepreneurial roots here in North America. A few years ago, you had 3 to 4 employees, and how many do you have today?
In America.
The company, LinkedIn indicates that we're more than 400 people right now, and the growth rate of the business is about subscription-wise about 50% year over year. So perhaps on your end, you can make some assumptions about the growth rates of employees for the future ahead. As a director of a public company, I can only say what's in the public disclosures.
Understood. So Alessio, I want to even touch on that for a moment, because when you guys had 3 to 4 people, you may not have been a publicly traded company on the TSX, and you're running a private company, buying your own IKEA desks and putting them together. What has been the big difference between being a small private company to being a public company from your entrepreneurial roots?
This question, I'm really passionate about it, because there are there are differences, of course. And I'll start by saying that every single year is a new journey, and really the vision that I talked to before, every year delivering the results that were planned, is a really big job, really big job. And so when I think of the main differences between running a small team and a small company and a global one that has public attention, is well, number one, people. Over time, I've mentioned this before, over time, you have to align the personnel at all levels, management and non-management, with the trajectory of the business and the expectations of the business, in order year over year to meet the expectations, whether those are private markets or public markets expectation. And double clicking on the topic of people, I think if there's one thing I've learned is that while leaders or startup leaders would like in their hearts that every single person that starts at the very early stages can grow at the same pace the business grows at, that doesn't always all true. It is in fact very hard for individuals to align with the expectations of the growth of the company. And so at times you have to make decisions in that regard to ensure that happens. Yeah.
Yeah, there's actually a book, I don't know if you've read it before, but it's What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And it talks about exactly, sometimes people can't continue to go along with the culture of the business and the growth of the business. Is that what you're referring to?
That's right. Yeah, 100%. And the other factor, and that I think was a challenging step for us, no more challenging than for I believe every business that scaled fast, is making intentional plans and being decisive about the type of target market. Essentially, once you can afford it, you have to decide who is your ideal customer. And you have to design the organization to be really good to satisfy and exceed the expectation of that type of customer. Because it's very easy in a horizontal software like a LMS to say, oh, we'll market to everybody, right? From the very small company, 30 people, up to we want a middle learner. Well, it's easier said. That's a very actually dangerous thing to do when you are non-focused and you're trying to do everything. You usually end up not being able to scale effectively. And I think that was for us a process that we had to go through multiple times and make it become a recurring habit of focusing on our ideal customer. I think to answer your question though, on the public side, you bring in talent that understands the public markets and you create a culture of what it means to run a public company. But the fundamental goals, which are building great products, delivering great products, and growing the company at a significant pace, those haven't changed a bit for us. Perhaps the rigor around public company management is completely different. There are tactics and processes management that we have had to evolve. I mean, if I think of in my business, my everyday business, my teams, for example, know that forecasting is a very serious job, right? Not that it wasn't serious before, but when you have a 6 people sales team, it's different than having a 150 people sales team. And so the processes and the leadership that is required to run those effectively with good metrics evolves, and again, you need to be willing to stay up to date, to hire the right people at the right time, to invest in yourself, and to grow your own personnel. So I don't know that I gave you guys a
that was great.
best answer,
Yeah,
but that's a lot to recap.
That's great. You know, earlier on in the conversation, you had mentioned people making mistakes, and you had to allow people to make mistakes. I think very often when you think of people making mistakes, especially as a small business, mistakes equal we lost money for that learning lesson.
Yeah.
And as a smaller business, how do you balance? You want people to learn their own lessons and you want them to have buy-in into what they do next.
Right.
And often they do that through their own idea orientation and through creating their own solutions. And some of them don't work out. Some of them are mistakes. Some of them cost the company money. How do you balance allowing people to create solutions that may not work out with, hey, we need to protect the bottom line as a small business?
Sure. Well, look, I think I always say this to my team that, you know, making mistakes is part of the job, and those that never make mistakes, they concern me because I don't know they work hard enough. But on a more strategic perspective that I have on this, I'm actually very inspired by some principles that great companies use in how they make decisions, and there's one in that is public. Actually, you guys can Google it yourself. It's public information available. The one door versus two doors decisions of Amazon. I don't know if you guys have ever come across it, but and I hope I'm not butchering it, but I certainly understand the sense of it. There are decisions that are important, but that are reversible, and there are decisions that are highly critical, that are much more difficult to revert from. And so a one-door decision is one in which you enter and there's not a second door to go to. Two-door allows you to pivot and change that decision quite quickly. So what I always say to my teams, and actually it's on our values internally, is make small bets and revise them frequently. When we're making big bets, when we're making big decisions, the one door type, the level of diligence that goes into those decisions is so high, is so incredibly thorough that we have to be confident that we are eliminating all the unknowns to the best that we can. And so let's stay agile and make fast, small bets. But when it comes to making decisions that will cost us a lot of money, if we make the wrong one, we better have an incredible amount of diligence in doing that. And I think, Rich, at a strategic level, that's how you avoid very costly mistakes, and you choose to afford yourself calculated mistakes that, however, you can afford, provided that the team understands at the moment we realize it's a mistake, it is time to pivot quick.
Alessio, that was very deep, specifically for me. I'm sure, Rich, you're probably connecting with my story here, but I made a one-door decision that cost me a company. And hearing you speak is kind of making it a little emotional for me. I'm over here going, man, I wish I had talked to Alessio a couple of years ago before making a one-door decision or seeing Amazon's premise, because it's so true. There are certain decisions you can make, you can just not revert from. And when you make those decisions as a business, whatever size you are, small business or large business, it can be extremely costly. It can cost jobs, it can change lives, it can have a real deep impact on a big group of people. So
John,
sharing that, I think it's a big learning for everybody.
You're reminding me of, and so is Alessio, on the idea between one door and two door decisions. There was a TED Talk I watched some time ago, and I believe it. I think it's. I just looked it up on the side. I think it's called a new equation for intelligence, and it's about an 11-minute TED talk. And the guy talks about that intelligence, how they built the computer to beat. I believe at the time it was a Russian chess champion.
Yep.
And they built a computer to do that. And the guy said, well, we found out that the algorithm to intelligence and beating a human, it's the same in business. It's the same across everywhere. And that algorithm is every move you make next needs to expand the number of options in the next move. So that was how the computer ended up being programmed, was it just calculated what gives me the most number of options next? That's the move that I'll do. So it's really interesting, the idea between the 1-door and 2-door, it's really about how many options will that allow me in my next move? And that is a known equation for intelligence, not just in chess, but in business and life.
Yeah,
and I think, guys, one other thing that I want to add there is with 1-door, 2 doors, or critical versus revertible, what is the cost of not doing, right? Like that's the other thing to consider, because with regards to the cost of not doing certain small projects is one that you can easily measure. On the bigger side of things, on the big decisions, you want to be careful and intentional to allow yourself to not make certain decisions. I'm going on a ramble here, but the point being, it's good again to say no.
Yes.
To say, yeah, that sounds like a great idea, but the cost of not making that idea happen is this, and the risk is really bad. And so that is the reason why I'm deciding for a no, even though that's a difficult no.
Well,
sometimes difficult no is good.
You spoke to that earlier, Alessio, the balance between money and following your plan. And customers are going to continue to ask for more things. If you do a good job in your primary business, a customer is going to ask you to do more stuff.
That's right.
And eventually you bolt on and you bolt on and you bolt on and you bolt on, and you have a Frankenstein of a company that's chasing money. And that's not what's optimal. You know, you're such a good guy, Alessio. I would love for you to come over and help us out with some home projects. I just want to spend some more time with you. It's like, no, that's not what we do. Hey, I'll pay you really well. Yeah, that's not what we do. That's not where I'm going to spend my time, is doing home projects, even if I like doing it, even if you'll pay me well. I need to be focused. And there's a cost to that focus, right? So you're talking about, Alessio, the cost of action in the 1-door or 2-door. But what you're also highlighting that's really important is there's a cost of inaction. There's a cost of not doing it, and weighing what's the cost of doing it versus the cost of not doing it.
That's right.
Yeah. Alessio, earlier in the conversation, to change gears here a little bit, you talked about investing in yourself. What are the things that you do as a director of a company to invest in yourself?
Oh, so critical. Like, that's probably, to me, top 3 takeaways that I will remember about our journey is the investment in yourself, but I want to highlight it also, investment in the people that surround yourself. That's just as important. But in order to be a good leader, you have to aim at bettering yourself every day. I truly believe it. I can't speak for others, but I can speak for those leaders that I've met over time that have impressed me the most. They have in common a few things. They study a lot, all the time. They read not just books, but they read research. that is available online, they network and connect with others, and they learn from others all the time. And they invest in their health, both mental and physical. And those are, you know, research says that they're completely correlated, that if you are a healthy human being, you perform better in whatever capacity you have, whether doesn't matter your role or seniority or rank in the organization. So to me, when I look back at the years of also being an immigrant from Italy to the States and establishing myself and building my life 2.0, which started again age 20 something when I moved to the States for good. There's been an intentional approach to, hey, who are the people that I want to look up to? You know, like, who are those 2, 3, 4, 5 individuals that I'm fortunate to be connected to that can teach me a lot? And I've been very focused on finding those. And, you know, I gave them the best of myself. And I tried to offer as much as I could, but the reality was I was there to learn from them. And just to be clear, I didn't pay any single of these people. I learned a lot of them because I was genuine. I said, hey, I'm reaching out to you because I need you to help me better myself. And it's surprising how people want to help. Naturally, it's in our instinct. If you're a good human being, you're automatically inclined to wanting to help others. And so I invested a lot in networking, a lot. I spend weekly many hours networking with people that I want to hire. Hiring great people has always been critical for me. And finally, I've undergone executive coaching for a while now. I'm very proud of that experience, and I want to do more of that because it teaches you a lot of perspectives, and you know, there's some tips and tricks that you take with yourself, and you grow, and you can also self-analyze back decisions you've made and ways you've gone about doing certain things thanks to that otherwise perhaps you wouldn't have been able to do a full retrospective on with somebody that is unbiased. Other things I do, you know, I spend quality time with my family. That makes me a better person. I have an 8-month-old son now, and it gives me just a peace of mind that I cannot gain anywhere else. And my wife is my number one supporter and partner, right? I can speak to her about challenges, and she's an incredible soundboard and counselor. So these are the things I do. And I don't think there's a magic recipe that everybody has to follow, but everybody that wants to lead has to build their own recipe that they believe in. That's for sure. But I don't believe in those that are like, oh, the 10 things you gotta do. I don't know. Everybody cooks differently.
Alessio, you just laid out the magic recipe. I'm sitting here taking notes on aim at bettering yourself every day. Study, read, research, network, learn from people, invest in mental and physical health, get mentors who you don't pay for and create relationship, and have executive coaches who you do pay for who help push you, and spend time with your family while you're at it, and really love your family. Like, I'm pretty sure that's the list. You just created a list.
I guess, you know, Rich, at the same time, I am me, and I function a certain way, and I respond to coaching in a way that is different than maybe you do. And so where I challenge everybody to give it a thought is, what works for me in the balance may not work for you in the same way, because we have a different history and approach to things. So everybody has got to be willing to go through the struggle of finding their own balance and readjusting that balance over time. Because now I have an my 8-month-old son. My balance is of a certain type, which is I don't sleep at night. But in 3 years, he's going to be 3 years old. There's going to be different challenges. And life is a matter of adjustment. And it's that willingness to adjusting and being emotionally intelligent that I think is critical. And that's why I said there's no static magic recipe, but there's a, hey, work hard to find yours.
You know, Pat Lincioni, or Patrick Lincioni, as he has on his books, he has a book called The Ideal Team Player. And on that book, he talks about the 3 attributes of an ideal team player are hungry, humble, and smart. And boy, you just touched on every one of those. And I admire you and I appreciate you so much in the way that you are hungry and you work hard and you get after it and you're humble. You don't assume that you have all the answers. You submit to being led from people who know more than you. And you're also smart. You just spoke to an emotional intelligence. And in that model, smart is not just straight up intelligence and taking a test. It's emotional intelligence and understanding yourself and others. And when I think of hungry, humble, smart, I mean, you're somebody who I think of, especially after this conversation.
Hey, man, I really appreciate that. That's too kind. I really do.
I beyond appreciating Docebo, beyond appreciating you as a partner, I appreciate you as a person and as a business leader and as a father yourself.
Thank you. And back to you, Rich. That means a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, Alessio, thanks for joining us today. I took a ton of notes as well and a lot of learning, and something that hit me pretty deep with 1 door and 2 door as well, that I think every entrepreneur needs to hear. And your story of going from 3 to 4 people in America to where you are today, and from a private company to a public company, and all the lessons you have, there's a lot of wisdom in them. And I hope that everybody listening grabs a few nuggets from it. So really appreciate your time today.
Guys, thank you so much for having me.